Hello! We are live in my studio for this morning's tutorial, and today we are switching it up and we are going to be using watercolors. My name is Daphne Cote. I'm a professional artist and art instructor. And I've got my handy dandy watercolor paint palette here. And I've got my paint water, which is always very handy. Don't get that confused with your tea. You will also need some paper towel and something plastic like a cutting board, or you know what, cutting boards work best. Something flat that you can tape your paper to. That won't absorb any water. So that's the biggest thing that you want to consider. And then we've got some watercolor paper. I am using 140-pound paper. It's a cold press. You can see right here. And it's made by Canson watercolor paper. It's really reasonably priced and you can get it just about anywhere, and now order just about anywhere, as all the stores are kind of shut down due to this pandemic. So I'm really happy that I can bring you some art lessons. And just remember that a lot of the art stores, well, I know for in this area in Alberta, are still open, just not open to the public. So you can order your supplies or give them a call and order your supplies, and you can go and pick them up, or they can ship them to you. So that's really wonderful that they are doing that. So let's get started. We will just shift this down here so you can see what I'm working with. So I need to get a sheet of paper. Oh, and did I mention you need some masking tape? Some tape of some sort. Masking tape works best, but grab what you have. Let's see here. I am going to take this piece of paper here, and I'm going to use a ruler as a straight edge so that I can cut it down to the shape that I want. So I think I'm going to have it about there. And I'm pretty good at just eyeballing it, but you might want to measure it, make a mark. Let's just do that because let's be a good example. So let's say I want it at about this point here. So I'm going to mark it at the 3 inches. 3 inches right there. And then put my ruler along that line. And you want the hard side down. You don't want any raised lip when you're trying to tear it. A raised lip on your ruler. So then I'm just going to push down really hard with this hand, and then I'm going to pull up with this hand, and we're going to tear that paper. There we go. I'm going to set this paper off to the side. Okay, and then watercolor paper has 2 sides, and you can use either side. There is no right or wrong in art anyways, but there are 2 sides to the paper. One is a textured side. You can kind of see it if I move it like that. And one is a very smooth side. So the smooth side is for more if you're trying to get really even color, and you don't like that watercolor look, you want more of an illustrative look. And then the textured side is for the more watercolor look. So the watercolor and pigment will pool into the texture of the paper. So I'm going to work with that today. I'm going to work with the rough side today because we are doing a landscape with a sunset and a tree, and I think that that lends itself to looking like a pretty good watercolor painting. I want it to look like a watercolor painting. I'm not looking for something hyper realistic, so I want something that's a little bit more playful and that gives to the medium a bit more, so I'm going to do that. So let's go and add some tape. So I am eyeballing it, making sure that it's even, a little less than a centimeter. So here in Canada, we like to just confuse people by using both the metric system and the metric system and what do you call it? I don't know, the American system. We use inches and centimeters all the time, even in the same sentence. So that's like what? A quarter of an inch? So yeah, about a quarter of an inch. So how very Canadian of me. I say the word about and inch in the same sentence. All right. So we're just laying down this tape as evenly as possible. And that's the nice thing about watercolors is that when you're done, one, they're really quick, especially if you do just little watercolor paintings. And then they are also, they look really finished because they have this like white border around them. I love making cards with them. I do have an Etsy shop with a bunch of cards available on it. But they just look so finished when they're done. So easy and quick. So I do want to get out that's not going to work, putting that there. Silly me. Okay. I do want to get some paper towel, fold it in half, and paper towel is our best friend because we are going to put our brush into the water, grab some paint, and then when we want to then when we want to clean our brush, we wipe off the paint onto the paper towel. We don't swoosh our brush into the water because then it makes our water dirty really fast, and we use that in order to blend and use on our paper. So whatever color is in here is going to go on here, and that's when you make mud colors, which we do not want to do. We want to keep our colors clean and fresh, so let's not do that. All right. Let's start here. We want to have a like pinkish color. So let's see here. I have more of a pink here. I have, in my watercolor palette, I have 2 reds, 2 blues, 2 greens, 2 yellows. So one's warm and one's cool. And I like to work that way with watercolors. I don't know, it makes me happy. And in acrylics, I don't find it matters as much, but I don't know, for watercolors, I really like having that variety of both. Okay, so we're going to look for the horizon line on our image. Let's bring up our image here. So there is this dark line, and when we're working with watercolor, we need to work from light to dark. But I want to put in that horizon line so that I have a marking of where things are going to go. And I think that it's kind of this pink color to start with. So I want to put in that pink. And then I'm going to So I'm taking water and then dabbing it onto the paper towel to get my brush clean, and I control how much paint is on my brush. And I put lots of water. I'm using, doing lots of washes, so I'm going really, really light, so I need lots of water mixed in with my pigment to start, and then we'll get to using more and more pigment as we go. So then I'm gonna grab this like orange, and I'm just kind of going into the water here to create that reflection. It's orange first and then it goes to yellow. And then there's like this orange scoochy thing right there. And then I'm gonna grab some more orange and go above this pink. And you can blend right on the surface with watercolor. You can color mix right on the surface. And if you rub too much, then the colors do blend. And you want to watch how much pressure you put on your brush as well, because you don't want to end up pulling up the paper by scratching it too much. So I'm going to grab some yellows. So I'm going to grab some yellow paint here. And I like to start off light. I can always go darker, but it's harder to get it lighter, so starting off with that. Nice and light. Like that. And then I need a little bit more vibrant yellow because there's like this line of yellow right in here that's really quite vibrant. And then I notice that this edge tip right here gets a little bit more pink than orange. So I want to add that in there. Add a little bit more pink just on this side. So you can keep building up the color as you go, just incrementally. And if an area is wet and you put more wet color into it, it's gonna bleed, so it's gonna blend together. So if you know that, then it can work to your advantage. But if you're not paying attention and you're working wet into wet, then it wouldn't be very good. So we can't put leaves on this, some dark colored leaves on this right now, because it will just bleed all over the place into there. How's that for, can you see the color happening there? This is starting to dry, but this is all yellow, just really, really light. All right. So now I'm going to get into some blues. I'm going to use a warm blue. Maybe even let's start off with some greens. Some yellowy greens that are really, really light, just as a transition from this yellow. I just see a tiny bit happening there in the water, and maybe a little bit in the middle here. Okay, so then we want to get into some blues. We can make it a little bit tealy by adding some of that green to it. All right. Working my way across. Adding a little bit more water water so it flows really nicely. And the top is quite dark, so we'll add some more blue to the top that's a little bit thicker. And this is where you can, I love doing sunsets and things like that because this is where you can really play with the watercolor and see what it does. So I added a bit of blue that's a lot there, and now I grab just straight water on my brush. I didn't take the color off or anything, just add more water to it so that it could blend, and I can push it around a little bit. And now I want to go light again because the water reflected is a lot lighter than what's happening in the sky. So I'll add a little bit more water. And then I'm gonna stir up, reignite some of this green here so that it blends really well. And then I'm gonna clean off my brush and I'm gonna come at it from the other side to kind of soften that edge between the yellow, orange, and the green. Just using straight water just softens that edge. And then we're gonna paint along here, adding a bit more water. Now I want that yellow to stay yellow. I don't want it to turn green, so I have to be very careful when painting around that. Now you can start to see some of the really interesting effects that watercolor has, like in here where you have more water, and then in this area where the pigment is thicker, so it kind of bleeds out and does this interesting watermark design. And then I'm going to add a little bit more orange down here. There we go. Excellent. Okay, so now we need to let this sit and dry for a little bit. So you can kind of see what's been going on. Let's tilt. How can you see that at a good angle? Ooh, ooh, ooh. And there. Whew. Took me a bit, but I got it. So you can kind of see how things are shaping out. We're going to end up putting the tree right in here, the dark horizon line over here. But basically I've got my water and my sky, and you know what, I might add a little bit more yellow to this area here. And this looks darker because it's just drying. So as it dries, it'll lighten up. So the colors do change in watercolor. It's kind of an interesting and fun thing. That's why it's more playful and experimental, I find, than like oil. If you're looking for more precision, you want to go with oil. But this lends itself to doing like organic things like landscapes and florals and things like that really, really well. Okay. Can blow on it. Get that going. So how's everybody out there? This is the part where you just have to like sit and wait for a little bit. This is where you go and make yourself some tea, and for me, I'm having a bite of breakfast. Today is the first day that we are going to be homeschooling our kids. Last week, everybody in central Alberta took the week off for spring break. So now we are looking at getting into the whole routine of homeschooling. And the teachers have been really amazing by contacting us and keeping us in the loop, and I'm really appreciative of all those amazing teachers. And I'm glad that hopefully you can find things like this, tutorials, free things that artists are doing online to help supplement your homeschooling. Keep things fun for both you and the kids. Okay, so you'll notice that the paper bubbles. What happens is that once you leave it and it's dry, the tape will keep it stretched and it'll go back to that form. If you don't have the tape on there, it will dry in that weird bubble way. It'll ripple up. Okay, so now what we need to do is create a dark color here for the leaves and the tree and all of that. So I'm going to go with a dark blue and a green. So there's a bit of a green already mixed in there, but I'm going to go with a dark green. So it's more to the greenish side. And then a brown. So blue and browns make my favorite dark colors. That's the combination that I like the most. So this isn't too thick, it's still quite watery, but it will help us to build the tree and the landscape, and we'll get thicker with the paint as we go. So capturing the horizon line and also the reflections that are happening in the water. And we're just kind of drawing along. So you don't want to press too hard with your paintbrush. It's just skipping along the surface to grab these trees, if you can see that there. So I just skipped along to grab the surface of these trees. So just very lightly touching the page, kind of creating some dots that go along. And then I'll fill that all in. So I'm not going to be using much water for doing this because we want the paint to be quite thick and dark. I'm going to just mix some more paint so it's even thicker and darker. Move it over to the palette side, wipe off the brush, and then grab that dark green. So it's I believe it's, what do they call it? It's not a phthalo. We've got a viridian green and a like navy blue type of thing happening there. And then we want to grab some brown and mix it in there to get that dark color. Now just remember, whatever you do to the top, you need to do right below it in the reflection. So I dabbed off the water onto the paper towel before grabbing some more paint because I don't want the paint to be too thin. I'm just going to mix a little bit more blue and brown. There we go. And then I noticed something else is that there's some purple that is happening in there, but I can't add that until this color is dry. So if this color is drying and I need to wait, then I can move back over here. So that's kind of how watercolor can train you to work quite quickly, is that in order to keep going, you need to find other areas to work on and then come back to the previous areas you got when it's dry. So I'm going to come back over here and work on this. And there's just like some dark things that are happening here that make it a little bit interesting. Creates a little bit of a different dynamic. So then the top of this is quite dry now. It's dry enough. So I can go in there with a purple type of color, controlling how much water I have, how much paint I have on my brush, and just skim across here. And there we go. So I just added some purple. There we are. So you can kind of see how that is going and taking shape. All right, so now I need more green added to here. I'm just looking at this tree and figuring out what's the difference between the color of the trunk and the color of the leaves. So the leaves are tinted a little bit more towards the green, and I would say that the bark is more towards a browny blue color, like a gray. So let's try that. So for this bark color, I'm going to find, where am I going to place it, because you got to measure twice, cut once. What kind of angle is it going to be? Is it straight up and down? I think it's a little bit curved in. And where is it going to fall in conjunction with the land here? All right, measure twice, cut once, got the right color, got the right brush, got the right angles. There we go. Okay, so often we wouldn't do the whole background. You'd leave room for the tree and you'd go around. But I knew the colors that we were going to use and that they would blend in nicely. So I just rubbed a lot over top right here, and it broke up that landscape, because it's not completely dry, but it's reworkable, watercolor is, so you can work that right through. Okay, now I want to put in some of these branches. Remember, measure twice, cut once, because where you put it is where it's going to be. And if it isn't, then it's a happy accident and you're just gonna have to go with it. So when it's going through the landscape here or through color transitions, just do a little bit of this dabby business in order to work it through. Okay, so I need to mix a little bit more color of that blue and brown together to make that gray. And I think it's a little bit more on the brown side right now, yeah, which is okay because I'm going to take more brown than blue in my mixture and go down the side of this tree. And then I'm also going to create a little knot on this side. So it feels more tree-like. And then it'll seem like the light is hitting this side of the tree. And so it'll feel like the light is hitting this side of the tree and then shadow on this side. So it's kind of backlit. And then I can take that same dark stuff through into these main branches. And remember that branches, as they go away from the tree, get thinner, and as they come towards the tree, they get thicker. So you want to keep that in mind. Okay, then we're going to take this blue, green, and brown mixture that's quite dark, and it's dried up on the palette, so I don't take a lot of water to reignite it because I want to keep it dark. And then I just start placing in all of the little leaves. So we use our reference image as a guide, but it is just that. It's just a guide. So it doesn't have to be perfect, and it just helps us get the feeling of the leaves. So there's no way that we're going to possibly fit all of those tiny little leaves in there, but we get a sense of how they feel and what they look like in general. So we use them as our inspiration. And let's see here. There's other branches that come down and things that are happening. So this is where it can become really quite therapeutic and dabbling these little branches. And some areas get like completely saturated, so there's so many leaves and things overlapping that you can just fill in an area too. Now for the most part, because the background color is blues and yellows and oranges, those are all colors that we've mixed into this dark anyways. So the browns have reds in them. There's the greens that have the yellow and blue, and then there's a blue which has the blue in it. So it kind of lends itself to going over top of the sunset and into the sky, and the sky is painted quite lightly, so it's not done in thick paint, so it works out quite well. So once you start to get a feel for the shape and the way that the leaves go, then you find that you start to get a little bit more bold and with it. So it just takes a little bit of time and practice and learning about the different shapes that are happening within those leaves, how they fall and fold, and then you start to develop a way of using your brush to mimic that. Now just don't make sure that you're using the reference image as your guide still, because you don't want to completely make things up, because we're silly animals and we like to organize things a little too much, so we'll create straight lines or really repetitive shapes, so be wary of that. But again, you can still start to go a little bit faster, getting some expression with your brush. I want that filled in a little bit more, this area, so I'll just push the brush down a little bit harder to get the large shapes in. Again, I'm going to be painting a lot faster than you guys because I've got experience. I know I've mentioned that in some other videos as well. So I've been doing this for over 25 years, so I'm going to be a bit faster than you. And that's okay. So Ashley says, if you were using watercolor pencils, would you color directly on the paper and add the water later, or would you use a wet brush on each of the pencils? And also any brush recommendations? Great question. If you're using watercolor pencils, I would probably draw in some colors really lightly, like skim across the surface, and then use a brush afterwards. I would probably go, if you're starting out, get and here's the thing with brushes, is that each brush company sets their own sizing numbers. So this is a number 6 in a series 5 art. Basically, it's a synthetic nylon brush. It's really quite inexpensive, like less than $5 at the art supply store, but you can even go to like the dollar store, well, if it was open, to get one. So call up the art supply store, ask for a medium to small round synthetic brush. Usually anywhere between a number 4 and a number 8 will give you about this size here. So can you see that size? And you can do an entire painting with just this brush. So it works really, really well. If you're looking for something fancy and playful, the next one that I would recommend would be a cat's tongue. So this is really cool and interesting for watercolors because you can do really large washes. So if you're planning on doing big paintings, so using a full sheet, 11 by 14 or bigger, to I think they make them quite large now, so even up to 3 by 4 feet. So you can use this kind of brush and it covers a lot, plus it's got a point to it. So that's pretty cool. And I couldn't even tell you. This is, I believe it's a synthetic brush. It's just colored. Yes, it's synthetic. And then I today am a little bit spoiled, and I have a Kolinsky sable brush. So sable brushes are really good too. I have this one that's quite long. They are more expensive. See, this one here says it's a number 8. Oh no, this one is synthetic too. I do have a long handled one too somewhere. I don't know where it is. Okay, but anyways, it's a Kolinsky sable brush, so ridiculously expensive. But when you're dealing with watercolor, the brushes will last you a lifetime. So the only thing is that you might lose it before it gets wrecked. The pigment doesn't wreck the brush. You can wash the pigment out even if it's dried into the brush. So watercolor brushes they last you a lifetime. You can even get fancy ones where they unscrew in the middle, and then the back end here becomes the lid. And they're really good for traveling. And I have another one. Oh, it's tucked away, where the handle actually fills with water, and the end is synthetic, and the water comes out the tip. And I haven't quite mastered that yet. I think I need to take a course on it or something before I can use that one as effectively. But for traveling, that one appears to work really well too. And I've seen some people do some really amazing things with it. So yeah, so with your watercolor pencils, you would just dabble in a little bit and then take your brush and kind of work over top of it, making the paint come alive. I've seen a lot of really cool things done with watercolor pencils, because you can get both like a sketchy look and then have this like washy look with it too. So yeah, it's really quite fun. So I hope that answers your question. So I'm just going through here. And working my way in here. There we go. Remixing some of that dark green. As we're just trying to build this up. Need a little bit more blue in that mixture. I'm going to continue going down, really thinking about the composition as to how far down we want these to go, these leaves to go. thicker and thicker with the paint if possible, using less and less water as we try to get some darker colors. So it's all about controlling the amount of water to get the value, the tonal value, so the right light and dark. And I'm trying to, every once in a while, take a step back and see if I have the right shapes. Like, where is it really thick with leaves here? I'm trying to see it as a whole instead of getting too lost in just all the little tiny details. It's still got to be a painting in the end, a composition. Alright, so we're gonna keep mixing more paint. If it's too warm or too green or too blue, then you just add the other colors to it to get it to where you want it to be. There we go. And now I'm just going to start going over some areas because they're too light, so I need another layer of paint on them. Just bring it a little bit darker in there, darker in the trunk of the tree. Darker in some areas here. I'm going to just take some more blue-gray here to add another tree trunk to kind of split up that space. Slowing down and really paying attention to where I'm putting those marks because I want them just in the already done leaves, because I'm trying to get them darker. And I'm going to go more with just a blue and a brown to get really dark, like almost black here happening, creating a little bit more definition and edge. Oh, I'm grabbing some green to put around that shape that I just put in. Here we go. Filling that in. So there's not as many leaves as in the image, but I think I like it this way. So that's where you get to be like, you have some artistic license. You get to decide how many leaves are going to be in the tree and what it's going to look like. Oh, my brush is getting a little wonky on me there. Gotta straighten it out. brush got a little too splayed. I'm just going into those marks and adjusting them. All right, so if I was to continue on, I would let this dry and then go back and create some even darker bits in the dark areas. So going in here, making this darker. And then continuing on with just filling in the inside of these leaves. With darker areas. So if you can see, there we go. Let's try and see here. So I just go into the inside of the areas, so the edge still has like a bit of this green happening, and then I just like dabble on the inside to make them feel a little bit more solid, so that the leaves are backlit. Something like that. So it was actually someone who had contacted me through social media asking me if I would do a watercolor tutorial with a reflection dealing with water. So that's where this stemmed from. So if you have ideas of tutorials that you would like to see, projects that you'd want to work on, please let me know. I'd love to work on things with you and hear what you'd like to see. So I'm just going to sign the bottom. So I just twirl the brush a bit in the paint before I sign it. And I use a color that will complement the painting. There we go. All right, and then what you want to do is let this sit for a while until it's completely flat. And then you go and you take the tape. So I would probably leave this for like another 2 hours, and then I would take the tape, and when you're taking the tape off of the painting, let me just move it over here, then you just want to pick it up on the edge, fold it over, and then press it down and pull to the side. Don't pull up. If you pull up, it's going to like tear off bits of the painting or tear the edge of the paper. But if you just pull along the side like that, then it will come off quite nicely. Sometimes the bits of the paper do come off, but it gives this a rough edge, and I think it looks nice, so I go with it. So there we go. We just pull the edge. Excellent. There we go. So sometimes, see, I pulled up and it took a little bit of a nick out of the painting right there. So then I can just take some water and whatever color is used in that little area, and I work my way out from the inside like so. and it'll create a straight edge for you. That kind of fixes it. So there we go. There is our watercolor image for today. I hope that you enjoyed painting with me today. I know I enjoyed painting with you today. And yeah, we'll be here again tomorrow morning for another tutorial. All right, have a great day, everybody, and please share this video on social media so that people can, can participate as well and get a little bit inspired in their day. Thank you.